Declaration of Independence, a bold stand for freedom. So now let's take a closer look at the Declaration of Independence. The Declaration of Independence was a document that declared the 13 American colonies as free and independent states, no longer under the rule of King George III of Great Britain. It was one of the most important documents in American history, and it had a profound impact on the course of the future. The Declaration of Independence stands as a cornerstone of American history, a document that not only announced the separation of the colonies from British rule, but also articulated fundamental principles that have resonated throughout the ages. Drafted primarily by Thomas Jefferson with contributions from John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Robert Livingston, and Roger Sherman, this document was a culmination of the growing discontent and grievances that the American colonies harbored towards the British Empire. It is important to note that the creation of this document was not a spontaneous event. It was the product of years of mounting tensions and discussions among colonial leaders. The seeds of discontent were sown by a series of acts and policies imposed by the British Parliament, such as the Stamp Act and the Tea Act, which were seen as oppressive and unjust by the colonists. As the situation escalated, the cry for independence grew louder. By 1776, the desire for self-governance and the belief in the right to liberty were so strong that when news of the outbreak of hostilities in Massachusetts reached other colonies, it was met with widespread support. The Continental Congress convened in Philadelphia to discuss a unified response, and it was here that the decision to draft a formal declaration was made. On June, after much deliberation and debate, the committee tasked with drafting the declaration presented their work to the Continental Congress. It outlined the reasons for the separation of the colonies from Britain, highlighting the king's repeated violations of their rights as Englishmen. The document asserted that all men are created equal and endowed with certain inalienable rights, including the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It argued that governments derive their just powers from the consent of the governed, and that whenever a government becomes destructive of these ends, the people have the right to alter or to abolish it. The impact of this declaration was profound. It not only served as an announcement of independence, but also as a philosophical treatise on the nature of government and the rights of citizens. It became a beacon of hope and inspiration for those who yearned for freedom and self-determination. The Declaration of Independence was inspired by Enlightenment ideals such as natural rights and popular sovereignty. It articulated the belief that all people are created equal and that they have certain inalienable rights, including life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The document also affirmed the right of the people to overthrow a tyrannical government. The Declaration of Independence had both immediate and long-term effects. In the short term, it rallied the colonists around the cause of independence and inspired them to fight for their freedom. In the long term, it has served as a model for other nations seeking independence from colonial rule. It has also been a source of inspiration for those fighting for civil rights and social justice. Battles, bravery, and the birth of a nation. The Revolutionary War unveiled the Revolutionary War was more than just a battle for independence. It was a struggle for liberty, a testament to human courage and a defining moment in world history. As we reflect on this pivotal period, let us pay homage to the bravery of those who fought and sacrificed to secure our freedom. The war was on, and both sides began to mobilize their forces. The British had a large and well-trained army and navy, while the Americans were outnumbered and outgunned. However, the Americans had something the British did not, and that was motivation. The Americans were fighting for their freedom, and that gave them a powerful edge. The war would last for 7 long years. The war began in April of 1775 with the battles of Lexington and Concord. On April 19, 1775, British troops marched from Boston to Concord to seize colonial military supplies. They were met by colonial militiamen at Lexington and Concord, and the first shots of the war were fired. The siege of Boston that followed demonstrated the growing strength and determination of the colonial forces. Led by General George Washington, they effectively blockaded the city, forcing the British to evacuate. This early victory boosted morale and set the tone for future engagements. One of the early battles of the war was the Battle of Bunker Hill, which took place on June 17, 1775. Despite being outnumbered and having fewer supplies, the Americans held their ground and inflicted heavy casualties on the British. Although the Americans eventually lost the battle, Their bravery impressed the world and showed that they were a force to be reckoned with. The challenges faced by the Continental Army were immense. Disease, lack of supplies, and dwindling enlistments threatened to cripple the war effort. Yet through it all, figures like General Horatio Gates and Benedict Arnold kept the fight alive. Their leadership and the unwavering support of local communities sustained the army through its darkest hours. The war was not going well for the Americans, and they needed a victory to boost their morale. They got that opportunity in September of 1777. That's when the British surrendered at Saratoga, New York. This victory was a turning point in the war. It convinced France to join the war on the side of the Americans. With French support, the Americans were able to continue fighting the British. As the war reached its climax, the Siege of Yorktown in 1781 proved to be the final chapter. With the help of French troops, American forces trapped a large British force under the command of Lieutenant General Charles Cornwallis. On October 19, 1781, Cornwallis was forced to surrender, marking the end of major fighting in the war. The Treaty of Paris in 1783 officially recognized American independence and set the stage for a new nation to emerge. The United States had been born. As we remember those who fought and died for our freedom, let us also celebrate the courage and resilience that defined the Revolutionary War. Their sacrifices not only secured our independence, but also laid the foundation for a nation built on principles of liberty and self-governance. The birth of a nation was indeed a remarkable feat, a testament to the power of ideas, the courage of individuals, and the pursuit of a better future. The Founding Fathers, the unsung heroes behind America's independence, behind the thunderous roar of the Declaration of Independence and the echoes of the Revolutionary War, stood the Founding Fathers, a group of individuals whose contributions often go unsung. These men, hailing from various walks of life and representing different interests, came together to forge a new path for the colonies. Among them was John Jay, a diplomat whose efforts in securing crucial alliances with European nations played a pivotal role in winning the war. Alexander Hamilton, born out of wedlock and raised in the Caribbean, rose to prominence as an aide to General George Washington during the Revolutionary War. His contributions to the war effort were instrumental. Following the war, he went on to become the first Secretary of the Treasury and one of the most influential figures in shaping the early American government. John Marshall, the fourth Chief Justice of the United States, is considered one of the greatest jurists in American history. His rulings on landmark cases such as Marbury v. Madison established the principle of judicial review, giving the Supreme Court the power to declare laws unconstitutional. James Madison, often referred to as the father of the Constitution, played a pivotal role in drafting the framework that has governed the United States since. His contributions to the debate and refinement of the Constitution were instrumental in ensuring its ultimate success. These are just a few of the Founding Fathers whose contributions shaped the early years of the United States. From rebellion to ratification, how the Constitution was born in the aftermath of the American Revolution, the former colonies found themselves at a crossroads. They were a nation in the making, but they lacked a guiding document, a constitution that could shape their future. The answer came in 1787 when delegates from the states met at the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia. The task before them was monumental: to draft a document that could unite a fledgling nation and set the tone for generations to come. The ensuing debates were intense. The large and small states had differing interests, and the representatives grappled with how to fairly represent each. But from this tension emerged a compromise, the Great Compromise, which established a bicameral legislature with representation based on both population and equal state representation. This compromise, along with others, formed the backbone of the U.S. Constitution, but the road to ratification was not smooth. Anti-federalists like Patrick Henry opposed the new Constitution, fearing it gave too much power to the central government. To quell these fears, supporters of the Constitution known as Federalists penned a series of essays later collected in the Federalist Papers, arguing for the ratification of the new document. The brilliant prose of Federalist 10, written by James Madison, addressed the issue of factions, while Federalist 51, also by Madison, delved into the separation of powers among the different branches of government. The debate raged on, and finally on September 17, 1787, the Constitution was signed in Philadelphia, not by the 56 men who had originally gathered there 2 months before, but by 39 delegates representing 9 states. The document established a three-branch government, a legislative, executive and judicial, each with defined powers and responsibilities. This system of checks and balances was designed to prevent any one branch from becoming too powerful. To become law, it needed the approval of the states, and so began the process of ratification. As the debate over the Constitution continued across the states, a group of influential figures known as the Grand Committee worked to address the concerns of those who opposed the document. One of their key accomplishments was the introduction of the Bill of Rights, a series of amendments that would guarantee individual liberties. In June 1788, New Hampshire became the 9th state to ratify the Constitution, meeting the requirement for it to go into effect. However, the fight for the Bill of Rights was far from over. As the first Congress convened in 1789, the issue of individual rights took center stage. The debate was fierce, but ultimately on December 15, 1791, the Bill of Rights, consisting of the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, was ratified, cementing the principles of individual liberty and limited government that had been set forth in the Constitution itself. It established a framework for government that has endured for centuries, setting the stage for the United States to become one of the most influential nations in the world. In 1789, George Washington was elected as the first president of the United States. The country was still in its infancy, but the future looked bright. During the 1790s, the United States would face a number of challenges, both domestic and foreign, but the young nation would persevere and the experiment of democracy would continue. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and hit that bell notification so you never miss an upload. We'll see you next time.